Welcome to another episode of Thursdays with Tracy. I hope everyone is doing well. I'm going to bring on my guest here in just a few seconds here, giving him some time to prepare. Um, I'm going to be interviewing Jason Call, who is running as a progressive in Washington State, I believe District 2. And so I'm going to bring him on and let's see, let's get him on here so I can interview him and it'll be just Hello, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, Tracy. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. I thank you so much for doing this on short notice.
No
I
problem.
appreciate it.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
And I understand that you are in Cleveland. Am I correct?
That is correct. I am in Cleveland. I had an opportunity to take 10 days off of work and come out here to Cleveland to canvass for Nina Turner. I'm thrilled to be here. It is hot and humid here in Cleveland in late July, but we've been beating the streets, knocking on doors, having great conversations, and I'm optimistic that the team here is optimistic that we're going to get a win for Nina.
Yes, I'm hoping so too. But I want to get right off to your campaign. Did I get the congressional seat right?
You did. I've got it in my
Okay.
title right there. It's Washington's 2nd Congressional District. Beautiful location.
And what cities does that district include?
So the major cities are Linwood, Everett. Everett, I believe, is the third, or maybe it's the fourth now largest city in the state. But that's our largest population center is Everett. Bellingham, way up at the north end, which is a nice progressive college town. I've got the San Juan Islands and Whidbey Island, where Oak Harbor is. So probably not a very many nationally known big cities. Our district starts about 20 miles north of Seattle and runs about 75 miles all the way up to just south of the Canadian border.
Okay, great. And first question, I'll make it easy. What made you want to run as a congressperson instead of working at the local level?
Well, I was inspired by Bernie. I was a huge Bernie supporter. We've got a guy in office who's been there. Well, in 2016, he had been there for 16 years, and I had been pushing some local people, some people who are actually involved in Bernie's campaign and our revolution, to challenge him. Not only because he's been there too long, but just because he's a very corporate representative. We've got 7 Democrats in Washington at the federal level, 7 Democrats and 3 Republicans, 10 total districts. And he is the most corporate conservative of all of the Democrats. And I've been oppositional to him since 2005 when he signed on to the Bankruptcy Reform Act. And I've been challenging him as an activist within the district for a long time. And I had some people actually tell me that with these other people that we actually wanted to run, there was a woman of color in the district who we thought it's the right time to have a woman of color challenge a white guy in our district. And we really encouraged her to do that, offered her all the support that she might have needed. But, it really wasn't the right time and space for her. So we respected that, and we said we're not going to let this guy go unchallenged now. Progressives have momentum in our district, and I had gotten myself in the wake of Bernie's campaign, and I was a big part of the volunteer corps for Bernie in 2016. But in the wake of the Bernie campaign, I really had a lot of my fellow activists push me towards, like, you're the right one to do this. You know the issues. You speak well on the issues. People trust you. They look at you as a leader. And so I said, all right, well, if you guys are willing to get behind me and help me do this thing, I'll be the face of it. But it's really a team effort here. My campaign is very much a team effort. the what's going on with my campaign is really a team effort all across the district. But the bottom line is, in a blue district, we're a solidly blue district, where a lot of people like to call themselves progressives. Then we really should have progressive leadership, and we don't have that. We have very corporate centrist representation that does not really reflect the values of the district.
All right, and on our last show, The Progressive Queens, the other podcast I do, a couple of weeks ago, we had a long discussion about the corporate Democrats and the damage that they are doing. Talk about some of those specific things and how do you educate voters in terms of what's the difference between a progressive Democrat like yourself and more of your corporate type Democrat.
Yeah, and you know what? It's such a good question, and it's such a struggle. I mean, really, that is the struggle, is to get people who consider themselves good Democrats, good rank and file Democrat, vote blue no matter who, to recognize that the representation that they have, and really, I have to say about Washington State, I mentioned that we have 7 Democrats in the House, and we've got 2 Democratic senators. And the only person who is a progressive is Pramila Jayapal, and she represents Seattle. She's very secure in that seat. But all of the other Democrats are these sort of new Democrats. They're very focused on free trade and corporate profits. And there's only Pramila and only one other Democrat out of those 7 who support Medicare for all. The guy I'm running against does not support Medicare for all. And so we kind of start with those conversations. Do you want universal health care? Do you want all people to have the health care that, doesn't put you in debt, that ensures that you're going to get the treatments that you need when you need it, that doesn't leave the poor and the working class behind, that doesn't, there's a lot of institutional racism inherent in the medical establishment. How do we combat those kind of things? And so, you have to be able to approach people with sort of the facts on what progressive policy is, and then compare that with how is it that you can then justify supporting somebody who thinks that it's okay to kind of squeeze profit out of human suffering. And I spoke at the Medicare for All March in Seattle last Saturday, and one of the things that I said is, insurance companies are not providers. They kind of sell themselves as providers, but they're not the providers. The nurses are the providers. The doctors are the providers. The specialists and the therapists, and so why is it that is it okay that we have this third party, this sort of middleman insurance company that is able to tell doctors and nurses what they should be doing, what they can and can't do in the best interest of their patients, simply so that the CEOs of these companies and the shareholders of these companies can make a profit? Is that really what we're about? So you start having those conversations with people, and they start to recognize the difference. A lot of times I think you find people don't really think too deeply about those issues, especially when, and you find this with this corporate centrist Democrats, especially when they are secure in their health care, they are secure in their housing, they're secure, they're not saddled with student debt, they're secure in their retirement. And so all of these things that they are secure with, they don't recognize, unless you put it right in front of their face, that over half of our country, or I should say over a third of our country, has no insurance or is underinsured. Their insurance is not affordable. But you have to be willing to have those deep conversations. And when they talk about what a good Democrat is, one of the things that I am able to do is I am able to show them our state Democratic Party platform, where it says we support single-payer healthcare. We support our politicians not taking money from fossil fuel interests, from for-profit healthcare interests. And the reason that stuff is in our platform is because the Bernie crew, including myself, wrote that platform. We were able to, Bernie coming in, we were able to get ourselves elected to some prominent party positions. I myself did 4 years on the Washington State Democrats Central Committee from 2016 to 2020. And we wrote that platform and we expanded it to be the most progressive platform that the Democratic Party ever had in this state. And then we can take them the goods. And, and that platform passed almost unanimously, even by centrists, because say to those centrists, this is what we want as a party. They're like, oh yeah, that's a good thing. So now we get to take it to the public and say, this is our party platform, and these politicians don't stand for that. Now we can't accept
that. Thank you so much for that clarification, because I think it's very important, especially in the race that you're in, not to make this a Nina conversation, but since you're in Cleveland, I'm just going to go ahead and do it, because her opponent has basically outright lied about Medicare for all. It's the whole "you're going to lose your doctor" excuse. That is a false narrative as possible, but yet you hear Democrats, the centrist Democrats, over and over and over again say that, and they're saying it out loud.
Yeah, and what I say is you sound like Sarah Palin sounded back in 2008 when she was talking about death panels, right? Well, the real death panels are the insurance companies. If we have a government health, they say, oh, this is socialized medicine. It's not socialized medicine. Your doctor still gets to make the decisions. You as a patient still get to make the decisions. All we're saying is that the government is a big enough entity with enough resources that we can pay for it and make sure everybody has what they have. This is not about anybody, denying people insurance. And once, again, when you're able to explain it to people in that way, hopefully the wheels will turn and they will recognize, oh yeah, this is better for everybody, especially because the Democratic Party claims to, and I say claims to, stand up for the working class, stand up for racial justice, stand up for social justice, all of these things that the Democratic Party says, we're the party that fights for people. Well, when you look at the record, you don't really, you like to say you do, and you may be better than the other people because they're out of their minds, and they're, the Republican Party is essentially a proto-fascist, nationalist, white supremacist party. I mean, it's not even hyperbole to say that anymore. But, to say that we are better than them, that's not an argument anymore. Anybody can be better than them, right? We want to be as good as we can be, and that means serving all people.
Exactly. And another argument against Medicare for all or single payer healthcare that infuriates me to the uttermost is, how are we going to pay for it? I have yet to hear any politician when there's a war going on saying, well, how are we going to pay for that? I've never heard it. Maybe you have. I
Nope.
haven't.
Nope.
That one makes me so angry, because I'm like, well, it will actually save money. Single-payer healthcare will save money. How are you asking a question of how are you going to pay for it? We're paying for Joe Biden's healthcare. We're paying for Kamala Harris's healthcare. We're paying for all the Senate, all the Congress people. But for some reason, they don't want to reciprocate paying for ours. It makes literally no sense to me until I realize, oh, well, you have your anthems and your sickness and your humanus in it.
Yeah. Well, and the reality, just like you said, Medicare for all actually saves money. Single payer saves money. It cuts a huge administrative part out of it. And I don't know if you're aware, but I'm on the board of a single payer group in Washington State. It's called Whole Washington. And we have really what is the premier state single payer healthcare bill for our state. And we chose to, we've been trying to get it through our state legislature for the last couple of years. But because our state legislature, which is Democratic, both the House and Senate and our state legislature Democratic, but the health committees and the people who serve on those health committees are, when you look at their financing, they're bought off by the for-profit industry, particularly the chairs of those committees who have been in those positions for a very long time. They won't even look at our single payer bill. So we said, okay, we're just going to run a ballot initiative. We're fortunate in Washington State where we do have a ballot initiative process. And Whole Washington right now is in the process of gathering signatures, and we've got through the end of December to gather. We need about 320,000 signatures, good signatures, which means we're shooting for about 400,000. But if we can get those signatures by December, we will have a premier gold standard single payer bill for Washington State on the ballot for people to vote on. And of course, all the big money will come out then, and they will try and shoot it down, and they'll talk about those same things with socialized medicine. But, we are finding out that it's the Democrats that are the problem in holding up single payer in our state. We could have it, but they are holding it up. And that's the same way in New York, and it's the same way with CalCare. I looked into how much money the California Senate Chairman Richard Pan takes from the for-profit health industry, and over his career, he's taken $1.5 million for his campaign contributions. And there's so much corruption in government right now, and it all comes from the way campaigns are financed. But we're very fortunate in Washington. I think we're going to get a single payer bill for our state. Voters will get to have their say on it in November of 22.
Come to Indiana, please. Just please, because I live in a extremely red,
right,
super red state, and it always makes me just like, okay, I can't anymore, and you're giving me hope. So thank you, because I was just like, I'm so tired. I'm just giving up. That's it. I'm done.
Well, we're really enthused, and we are also totally willing. Anybody who wants to start a single payer coalition in their state, please get in touch with me. Talk to me about how you can get that thing started. And certainly if we get ours passed, I think there are a lot of people going to be coming to us and saying, all right, tell us how to do this. And our goal is not necessarily to say that every state can pass single payer by themselves, but to get enough of those big states like California, like New York, like Washington, like the big money states, because it's going to be more difficult in poorer states. The question of how you're going to pay for it. Washington's got a nice big tax base, and we're going to take the rich people's money and we're going to make sure people have health care. But once we get enough of those states that have that kind of influence to pass a single payer, people in Indiana are going to be saying, why can't we have that? They have great health care, and they're not going bankrupt, and their citizens aren't going bankrupt. We should have that too. And at that point, we're really hoping that the federal government steps up and passes that Medicare for all, because there's going to be a lot of cry for it once it starts going state by state, which, by the way, is exactly how Canada got their national health care. It passed in Saskatchewan first. A couple other states picked it up, and then, it worked well here, there. And then the government said, okay, we better do this for everybody. So we think that that's going to be the pathway. But right now, the federal government is not going to pass Medicare for all, I don't believe, for another 4 to 6 years without the kind of pressure we're putting on them.
Exactly. So I want to know, when you beat whoever your opponent is, and unfortunately, I don't know that person's name, and you don't have to utter their name. What would be the first bill that you would write?
That's such a big question. I really think we need to get campaign finance reform passed, because it is the root of all of our other troubles. We cannot get good legislation passed because we have too many politicians who are on the take. They are reliant on giant corporations. I'll tell you, my opponent right now gets well over half of his money directly from corporate PACs. And then the majority of that remainder he gets from people who put down as their, job title, CEO, executive, president. And so we're talking about big corporate names who are funding him, maxing out donors. His small donors are less than 1% of his total campaign contributions. So we haven't talked seriously about campaign finance reform in this country since the early 90s, when there was the McCain-Feingold campaign finance reform bill that didn't pass. But we have got to get campaign finance reform. Anna, I hear you there about Derek Kilmer, complete fraud. I have protested in front of his office with Whole Washington for him to sponsor Medicare for all. But as I said, there's only 2 out of 7 Democrats in Washington State who are sponsoring Medicare for all. And I want to say one of them, the one who is not Pramila Jayapal, ran on it in 2018 because he was pressured from the left, because there was a Democrat on the ballot. Anna, you probably know Sarah Smith's name. Was on the ballot against Adam Smith in 2018, and he changed his tune on healthcare and said, yeah, I'll support Medicare for all. He did not have a challenger from the left in 2020, and he barely mentioned Medicare for all. He ran on expanding the ACA. So a lot of these Democrats who are signing on to Medicare for all are doing it not for reasons of, seriously championing and fighting for Medicare for all. They think it's a good tagline, just like the guy that I'm running against right now, for the first time in 20 years, is calling himself a progressive. 10 years ago, he was proud to call himself a moderate. Now he's calling himself a progressive because it's a buzzword. He's saying he wants to pass bold progressive FDR-style legislation, where he is the furthest thing from it. I ran as an FDR Democrat last year now, and they were very shocked. They did not expect me. I got within 1% of being on the ballot next to him. 2,500 votes short. I got almost 35,000 total votes. It kind of shocked the establishment, but now they realize, we've actually got a progressive district, but they mouth the words. They are never going to fight for those policies. They're mouthing them just to keep progressives out.
And that, you just talked about the third subject that really annoys me, because when I hear the Jim Clyburn say that he's progressive, I'm like, okay, I had this thing on my show. I do not like to be disrespectful to senior citizens. I was raised never, ever disrespect a senior citizen. But in his case, either he doesn't know what progressive really is, or he's just flat out lying. I mean, you cannot take money from Big Pharma and be progressive. Those two things don't go together.
Or any of the giant corporations. You can't take money from the fossil fuel industry. I mean, the guy I'm running against gets a ton of funding from the war machine, ton of funding from the fossil fuel industry. And so I also wanted to say that, for people out there who have Democratic representatives, I mean, we know the Republicans, and there isn't even really any sense saying anything about the Republicans, but these corporate centrist Democrats, the real dirt on them is in the amendment voting. So all bills will, go through a number of legislative changes through an amendment process from when they're introduced to when the final bill is voted on. And we have dug up so many votes, like over 170 votes. I'm 100% in support of reparations and right now, and cash reparations, and defund the police and make sure that funding is, I know defund the police it's a people get all freaked out about it, but it's not saying that in some situations we might not need a response. But I am fully behind decarcerating the system, and making sure we have cash reparations, and making sure that the funding that currently goes to armed police, and this is another thing, people are unaware of how much money of their local budgets goes towards the police force. And anytime there are budget cuts, they will cut social services, they will cut, anything before they touch the police budget, like anytime. I say in this country we have a cult of police worship, and it's unnerving. But I forgot what I was saying. But anyway, to have the funding for armed police go to non-armed response, better trained clinical responses for certain situations, stuff that just, we just don't need an armed response to everything. And we need better screening. We get so many of the wrong kind of people who want to be police officers for the wrong reasons. And I think that there are some people who genuinely want to help their community. Maybe a lot of people genuinely want to help their community, but they're not well trained. And there's that code of silence within police officers where one officer won't, essentially turn on another officer if they know there's corruption. And I had a brother-in-law who was a police officer for 13 years, and he said, you wouldn't believe the stories of corruption I could tell you. And this is just in a small town in Wisconsin, but that's another, we don't have any serious accountability within the police force. So that's a huge problem. But,
Right. And what I say about defund the police, some people act like they don't know what Google is. All you have to do is go to google.com, type in defund the police, and it will give you a very detailed explanation of what it means.
Yeah.
With people like the Clyburns and the Obamas, oh, this lost the Democrats the seats. No, your crappy policies lost you seats, not defund police.
Well, and I don't want to say I'm worried, but I don't want the Republicans, honestly, as much as I take issue with corporate centrist Democrats, I don't want to see seats go to Republicans. But the reason they are going to go to Republicans, and I truly believe that the Democrats are going to get slaughtered in the 22 elections, is because the Biden administration is not demanding $15 an hour, is not demanding that we do pass a serious healthcare reform, that everything seems to get stalled out in the Senate. And I want to know, why are you allowing Mitch McConnell to run the Senate from the minority, right? Why would you do that when you have the option to overturn the filibuster and just get your policies passed? So if the Democrats take a beating in 22, it's their own damn fault. And I write for, I don't know if you know who Howie Klein is. He's Marianne Williamson's political director, and he runs a blog called Down with Tyranny. So if you go to downwithtyranny.com, he writes a lot of daily articles, and he calls on me for quotes because Marianne Williamson is a big supporter of my campaign. So I feed him quotes often about a variety of situations, and I come back often to this idea that the Democrats could bury the Republican Party forever if they just passed the policies that worked for everybody. You could bring back, people talk about West Virginia, how Republican West Virginia is right now. Why is West Virginia Republican? In 1980, when Reagan was first elected, West Virginia was one of the only states that did not go for Ronald Reagan. But what happened following that? You had issues with the coal mines. The union workers weren't supported there. They blamed that on the Democrats because it was a Democratic state, and we ended up losing West Virginia badly. But we could bring those people back if we would just pass policies that improve their lives. And isn't that what the Democratic Party claims to be about? It claims to be the party that is improving people's lives, and they are just not doing it.
And I would say, and I know you're running for office and you can't say it, and I will because this is my show. It's because they want to. If Joe Biden wanted the $15 minimum wage passed, and of course his whole, I'm going to blame Manchin and Sinema and all the other 8 or 6 that vote with them.
There's a handful of them, yeah.
You go to him and say, hey, you want such and such for West Virginia, this is how I expect you to vote. Or, least much, take Air Force One and fly to West Virginia and say, hey, this guy over here is trying to stop you from getting health care.
Yep.
Why don't you call him? That's the simple things that they don't do because they don't want to do them.
Yep.
Period.
And I had exactly the same criticisms of the Obama administration. I was thrilled when Obama was elected because he did run on, that he was going to be a progressive. He was going to make some serious change, and we got almost no change. And even the reforms to the healthcare system, the ACA, were so meager as to leave out 100,000 people from getting effective healthcare. That's not enough. I truly believe that it was the failure of the Obama administration to help the working class that led to Trump. Obama could have used his presidency to go around the country and, just as you said, demand that Democrats stand up for this, that, and the other. And I go back to, when we got Medicare in the 60s under LBJ, and I've read up a lot about how LBJ used his presidency to pass civil rights. Democrats were holdouts on civil rights, and Democrats were holdouts on Medicare. And he essentially, in political terms, he threatened them. Do you want to be reelected? Do you want people in your district to get this, that, or the other? Well, you better come along this way if you want those things. And I look at the way Obama and Biden, and I was like, I can't imagine LBA taking crap from Manchin and Sinema and that other handful.
Well, they're all in the same boat. That's the problem. Manchin and Sinema, they're just shields. They're shields for Biden to hide behind and say, look, I tried. I really tried, but these two they're stopping me and I can't do. That's
You're
because you don't want to. If you want to do something, you're going to move. Heaven, earth, the sky, the moon, the stars, the ocean. You're going to move whatever you need to move.
You're the president. You're the most powerful person on earth. You can do these things if you want to, which is why I'm glad we've got the squad out there. I just read a thing from Ayanna Pressley right now that says POTUS absolutely has the power to cancel student debt. So
oh, you mean after Nancy Pelosi said he did and it had to go through Congress?
Yep. And he absolutely does. I mean, that's objectively false that he doesn't have the power to do it. He does have the power to do it. And so we do need voices like Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib and AOC and a handful of others. But here's, again, we go back to this word progressive and why Clyburn supposedly, gets away with using the word progressive. We have, I think the Progressive Caucus is the largest caucus in the House, chaired by Pramila Jayapal. And there's something like 98 members of the. I think it's 98 because, wait a second, maybe it's 100. I don't remember. Nina Turner, if she gets elected, was going to be some number. Maybe it was 100, maybe 101. But we got roughly 100 members of the Progressive Caucus. Here's the truth: I could count on both hands how many are actual
progressives. Yeah,
actually progressive.
And I'm penning a letter to my congressman because if I call, I'm going to be one of those irate people, so I'm going to put my stain when I found out where he's getting some of his campaign monies from. That really disturbs me. And I want to encourage everyone, if you call, please don't threaten anybody. Don't go down to the offices and then decide we're going to just do a non-permitted protest. You'll get arrested and nobody has bail money for you. Stay engaged. But and I know I've kept you way longer, but I'm like, okay, I got so many questions.
I'm happy to talk. My canvassing day in Ohio is done. So
okay, great. Okay,
sit here and talk.
Okay, so here's one thing about presenting progressive ideas that I have, particularly with my family members. They'll say, "Oh, you want too much. Now is not the right time." I've always came back with, well, when do you designate when the right time is? Or when do you say, okay, me wanting the ocean not to burn, that's too much? It's too much for me to ask for, and I say a $35 living wage. I know people say 15, but I don't think 15 is enough.
I'm officially 25 on my campaign. I'm pushing for a $25 minimum wage. And I get chewed out about that, Yeah,
but because the whole thing is, oh, you mean to tell me somebody at McDonald's should make $15 an hour? Yes, and they need to make more. First of all, they have to serve your rude self. They have to clean the store, make the food, clean the outside, serve customers, make check. Oh, wait, no, look at what they do. Plus, if they get health care, if they work enough hours.
Yep.
Employee-based health care is not cheap. No. It is not cheap. I don't know why people say, oh, well, I have my employer. Well, what if you lose your job? Then what are you going to do? If you live in a state like mine that has Medicaid, you have to make, I think one person can make, I want to say $1,200 a month and qualify for Medicaid.
Yeah, and not only that, but in order to qualify for Medicaid, you essentially have to shed all of your assets. Like they will literally take your house in order to qualify you for Medicaid.
Exactly.
They want you to be poor before they'll help you, and even then, Medicaid is insufficient. So, I mean, $25 minimum wage. We had the report come out really not too long ago that said there is nowhere in this country that you can rent a 2-bedroom apartment on a full-time minimum wage job. So what does that mean? That's not family values to me, because that means that nobody can raise a family on that. I mean, it's poverty level wages. It's less than subsistence level. And a lot of these corporations won't give people full hours because they don't want to pay for benefits. And what do they want to do? They want the states to pick up the slack on what they won't provide as employers. And it doesn't make sense when it comes to healthcare because, insurance risk, is all about, do we have a big enough pool where enough people are paying into it so where we can afford to pay out for certain people who are covered and then still make all that profit for the CEOs? Well, the biggest risk pool in the country is simply the whole country, So
Exactly.
that is the biggest way to save money, is to have the federal government simply insuring everybody.
And it would save businesses money. If you think about
Absolutely.
it, I have a small business with no money, but eventually someday the company's going to make money. That would save me tens of thousands of dollars if I'm not having to take my profits and buy health insurance, which I would be glad to do. Absolutely, positively be glad to do. But if the federal government is taking that on, then I can afford to pay my employees more. Now, I know evil corporation XYZ probably won't do that, but in theory, it saves companies money. And I don't know why companies like large Fortune 500 companies are so against single payer healthcare. I'm like, it benefits you because you're not having to pay for all of those health benefits. And
well,
I'm not.
I think there is a reason that it is just it's just rooted in capitalist economics, where you want to suppress the working class as much as possible. And if we start passing policies that benefit the working class, it's like you said, you have people say, well, how much is too much? When is enough? You want it all. And that if we knock down that domino of healthcare, what's the next domino that's going to get knocked down? Because once we've got our healthcare, what are we going to start asking for? You're damn right. We're going to start asking for a $25 wage and a 32-hour work week. Because we've got surplus labor in this country. They talk about people not wanting to work. They just don't want to work for a job that is going to pay them not enough to live and working in terrible conditions. What they don't want.
Right. You just brought up my next point. So do you live in a state where the governor has said, I'm going to cut the extended unemployment benefits or not? Because I can't figure out, is Washington have a Republican governor or a Democrat?
We have a Democratic governor, and I'm pretty sure that we're not cutting extended employment benefits in our state.
Our state did. And luckily, the citizens of Indiana, we were not having it. And Indiana and Maryland got sued and had to start. And of course, they say they're going to appeal it, a waste of taxpayers' dollars.
Right.
And our question was, well, how, if the federal government allocates money to do a specific thing, how are these red states getting away with not using it for what it was allocated for? And I still can't wrap my head. I'm like, okay. And there's literally no answer that I have.
Well, the Republicans are just, they're frauds, in and out. So I'm sure, I don't know the politics of your state, but I'm sure they're operating fraudulently and selling it to your public as something that it's not. But I got to go in a couple of minutes, but I did want to talk to you about modern monetary theory at the federal level. And if you've heard of MMT, there's a book called The Deficit Myth, written by Stephanie Kelton, who was Bernie Sanders' chief economist on his campaign. And the idea behind MMT, and it's actually how the government runs. You asked earlier in the show, nobody ever says, how are you going to pay for this war? Nobody ever says, how are you going to pay for these tax cuts for the wealthy, right? Because tax cuts for the wealthy, essentially means that money is coming out of other budgets that's now not going to help the poor and the working class. So where does this money come from? The reality is the federal government can pay for whatever it wants to pay for. People, the conservatives, the austerity hawks, they like to talk a lot about our national debt. The national debt is of very limited importance. All that means is that our government is spending money out into the economy, right? Well, what do we want our federal government to do? We want them to spend money out into the economy. We want the government to support good businesses. We want the government to support education and healthcare. All of that is going to add to the national debt. But every dollar that the government is in the red means that it's out there in the community in the black. That means it's circulating out there in the community doing hopefully good. The key is, can we get the federal government to spend on things that are going to have long-term sustainable return instead of dumb shit things like wars that don't do anything? You know, a bullet and a bomb has absolutely no return. All that is money going into the CEO of Lockheed Martin and Raytheon's pockets and those shareholders, and causing worldwide turmoil. You know, so we literally can have a government that can do all of the good things for our environment. Like the government, you know, where's the money going to come from to clean up all of these Superfund sites all around the country that are the polluted areas? You know what? They should just spend that money. Why? Because we're going to end up with a cleaner environment, safer for the future, safer for our kids. Same thing with education. Why do we want to have our citizenry burdened with student debt when, if they were making that income instead of or keeping that income instead of paying it to essentially, you know, private hedge funds financing student loans, you know, they're going to be able to spend that, you know, at their local businesses. They're going to be able to spend that on other businesses and circulate that through the economy, have a better quality of life for themselves, and also support the economy. So, you know, bottom line is the federal government can spend on whatever it wants to. We just need people who are going to make the choices to spend on things that are going to have long-term sustainability and return, positive return, rather than all these negative things that the government tends to like to spend on. You know, the capitalist system, it's class warfare. It keeps the poor separated from the middle class, separated from the rich. You know, and we really need to recognize that, you know, unless you're Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, you're not wealthy. I mean, the people in this country who have that amount of wealth, there's just a fraction of the population who has that amount of wealth. Most people, even up to I was a high school teacher, made $85,000 a year, and I was in like the 91st or 92nd income bracket. So, you know, if you're making above $100,000, you are one, you're not rich, but you're way up there in terms of income, which means the people who are fantastically wealthy are a tiny fraction of the population. The problem in this country is that along with that wealth comes an immense and disproportionate amount of political power, and their goal is to keep their wealth and power and make sure that the rest of us don't have it. So if we looked when, you know, if you remember back with Occupy, you know, a dozen or so years ago, we always talked about the 99%. It really is the 99% against the 1%, but more than that, it's against the 0.1%. That has that immense amount of power. So we need to tax the rich. We don't need to tax the rich because we need their money. So this idea of we need to tax the rich at the federal level so that we can pay for stuff, that's not true at all. We need to tax the rich so that they don't have that disproportionate amount of power in our government. Vast income inequality is inherently undemocratic, and that's the problem with extreme wealth.
Absolutely. No problem. So last question. Tell us how we can contribute to your campaign and follow you socially.
So everything for me is Call for Congress. Jason Call, you can see it on the shirt, CALL. Callforcongress.com. Whoops, I'm doing the wrong side, but yeah, never mind. Callforcongress.com, FOR, not the number 4. Callforcongress.com is my website. There's a donate button there. All of my social medias, Twitter, Instagram. I do a little bit of TikTok now, but probably not the way it was intended. And my Facebook page is Facebook.com/Call for Congress. All Call for Congress, very easy to find me.
Thank you so much for this. I appreciate it. I know you're in Cleveland. You're working for Nina, yep. But I'm not in Washington. But I look forward to what you're going to be doing in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Appreciate it very much.
Have a great evening.
You too, Tracy.
Okay,
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Okay, everybody, I am by myself. That interview was great. I'm not going to prolong the program long because usually I like to stay under an hour, and right now we're about 44 minutes. Do like Anna said, remember to like and please follow us. I think we have like one viewer right now, and of course, I would love more, but it doesn't matter. I'm still going to do this show whether it's me all by myself or whether I have millions watching. It won't matter. But next week, join us because we're going to interview another politician. He's from the state of Indiana, and his name is Liam Norris. But I'm going to click everything in for Jason Call in this description. So, and I really want to thank, the few of you that watch this. I really appreciate it. Like I said, I don't care if the crowd is 1, 0, 2 million, 5 million. I'm still going to do this show because I get such a thrill out of having someone watch. Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much for watching. And so, here's the other thing. If you know of a progressive that's running for office, let me know. My email is tracymedia@gmail.com. I will put it there because this turned into an interview show, so I'm just going to roll with the changes, and that's perfectly fine. So if you know of a progressive politician, no matter what city, no matter what state they're running for, please let me know so that I can interview them because I just so much enjoy talking to progressive candidates. They always give me hope when I just literally don't have any hope. So I'm going to cut it here. I thank you so much. I love you too, Anna. Thank you. I thank you all for joining me. I will see you all next Thursday with my guest, Liam Norris. Have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.